Welcome to the Liverpool FA podcast. Our aim is to provide regular insight from a variety of experts to help you in your own football journey. We'll do it through interviews, roundtable discussions, and by linking to other resources to help support you. For more information about each episode, just tap the album art, which will provide you with more about our guests and links to further content.
Hello, welcome. In this episode, I'm joined by FA coach developer for Cheshire, Darran Bowles. Darran is one of the most experienced coach educators and coach developers in the country and is also a grassroots coach with an under-16 team in Lancashire. Darran is just an all-round brilliant guy, and he and I hosted a webinar for FA education down at St George's Park. If you haven't been involved in one of these before, we normally have around a couple of hundred coaches log on who submit questions based on a theme, and a couple of our coach developer team try to answer as many questions based on that topic as they can in an hour's conversation. In this webinar, Darran and I discussed match day, so the before, during and after, and how we can make match day a more positive experience for the players in our care. And we try and answer as many questions from the coaches as possible. So enjoy this one with myself and Darran Bowles. 6 o'clock, so we will get cracking. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Darran.
Evening, folks.
I hope you're well, and just some admin and a few housekeeping to start with. So if you are having any sort of technical problems, we've got our esteemed colleague Jake Kemp in the room here. So Jake, you'll find under the participants. If you've got any technical issues, if the sound's not working, the video's not working, if you can fire a message on the chat box, which you can access by the little kind of like, it's like a speech bubble, isn't it? Yeah. So click the speech bubble icon, pop a message in the chat box there, preferably to Jake, but I understand it if you just want to put it to everyone, and then he'll deal with that. Next part, housekeeping. So CPD event. So this will contribute 1 hour of CPD on your FA license.
That's right.
And really, there was a question actually which Darran and I have spent the last few hours trawling through, about 250 questions that came in. So thanks for those. There was one question actually which was asking, is there a limit to how many of these that you can go on? And absolutely not. You can do as much CPD that you feel is relevant for you, and you'll be accredited for it on your fan number and FA license. So yeah, I think we'll get cracking, shall we, Darran?
So, we'll try.
Yeah. Firstly, thanks to all of you for giving up your time, which I'm sure you do up and down the country, wherever you're coaching. And especially thanks if you are, if you were due to be coaching right now and you've chosen to come and sit with myself and Darran. What we've done is we've compiled and we've looked at all the questions that you've sent in, and we've kind of clustered them together, and we will try somehow in the next 58 minutes to answer as many of them within a kind of professional discussion as we can. So the way that we're going to look at it is looking at match day in 3 phases. So before the match, during the match, and after the match, and we're going to explore some of that. Now, we've left, I don't know how many of you can see it, some subtle messages on the whiteboard behind us there. I guess the preface to that is that we don't have the right and wrong answers. So what Darran and I have got is, I mean, your coaching experience is many decades.
Yeah.
Despite your youthful looks.
It's quite some time, but I think like yourself, Jack, what we'll try and do is talk around what we consider to be some good practice that we've tried to use in our own coaching experiences. So like yourself, Jack, currently coaching in grassroots, under 16 boys, and I've been coaching that group since they were under 9s. So built up various different experience over the years, working with that group of players. That it's not changed too much in terms of the boys that I'm coaching, but try and relate everything that we talk around, linking training to the match day and those 3 aspects of before, during and after to our experiences, and hopefully that will answer many of the questions that lots of you have posed around the topic for this evening.
Yeah, just on that, some of the questions that came in, what we've done is left on the whiteboard there is two big words in coaching, which is it depends. And then what I've done is that phrase kind of frustrates me a little bit because sometimes it's... Are you right there, Joe? Yeah. Sometimes it depends is something that I think sometimes we hide behind. So I would encourage coaches to, yes, use that phrase, but then add another word on. So it depends on if, on who. It depends when, what, where, and how. So get used to asking yourself or saying those words when you're confronted with problems in your own coaching. I think, are we all right here? We're having some technical problems. Are we good?
Yep.
Cool. Have we just spent the last 4 minutes talking to nobody?
No, you're speaking to him. There's the video.
Okay, don't worry about that. Right. So just on that, so some of the questions that came in, the it depends. There is very few black and white answers to the questions that have come in, and there's no magic bullets. So, for example, what is the best warm up for X? We don't know. No. We don't know, and I would encourage coaches to be very careful on attributing cause and effect to things like that. And I'll give you a really good example from the weekend. I know of a team that went to Lancashire to play, from Liverpool to Lancashire at the weekend to play in a match, and they were stood around, and the kickoff was 5-3, and the kickoff was 3:00, and at 5-3 there was no opposition, and so they went and found some people from the facility and said, "Do you know what's going on here?" No opponents there. And then they realised that they were at the wrong venue, had to get in their cars, shoot 5 minutes down the road, literally run out of the cars with no real preparation, or all preparation gone out the window. Lo and behold, they're 4-0 up in the first 10 minutes. Now, is that because of the lack of preparation? Probably not. Does a warm-up always ensure a good start? Probably not. Does a warm-up help? Yeah, might well do. But we can't always attribute cause and effect to stuff like that, Darran, eh?
And I think it's dealing with the unpredictable. Best intentions, you can plan and prepare for the game day, and link that back into the previous week's training session. So you've got that common thread that's linking your training sessions to the matches, and then the matches to your training sessions. But it's being able to adapt and be versatile and deal with unpredictable moments like you just described.
Yeah, so let's dive in then. So before the game, so you know your experience is elite, grassroots, right the way across the ages. What has remained consistent and what has changed in terms of the way that you prepare before a game, and how far back do you consider preparation before a game?
I think it has changed as the players have got older, and it's also changed as I've got a little bit more understanding and experienced about what matters. But we've always tried to link whatever happens on game day into the previous week's coaching sessions. So if we've been trying to encourage the boys to play in a particular way, looking at a particular aspect of the game, we've always tried to carry that through to the game day. We've always had some sort of routine, and I think that's been quite comforting for the players. So when they were in the foundation phase, and that was the earliest experiences of playing football, our routine was there, but it looked quite different to the routine that we've got now as under 16s. But that routine was certainly helpful for the players. So perhaps if you're working in the foundation phase, it may well be that social warm-up, getting the children together, and then getting them to play mini games that lead then into the format of football that you're playing. Now our routine looks a little bit more maybe like what you might see adults performing if you go and watch professional games or you go and watch non-league games. Reason for that is the boys go and watch football, and they've almost dictated to us how they would like the pre-match routine to look. We then just ensure that there's a link with what we've been working on Thursday evening. That's when we train. So a practice or a setup that we've used on the Thursday evening could well be the main part of our warm-up on a Sunday.
Right, and I want to reel back to something that you said right at the start. That answer is that you've realised that what matters on match day has changed over time. So expand a little bit more on that if you can.
I think acknowledging that the children change as they go through the phases, and as they go from extremely excitable under 7s through to the under 16s that they now are. I think that the approach that I've taken and the volunteer coaches that help us is to try and shape things around what the players need. So of late, the boys, they need to warm up in a particular way and they need to stretch. That's not to suggest that we didn't do that in the foundation phase, because it was about habit forming. But there's actually a real specific reasons why we now need to do it in terms of injury prevention. And we want to ensure that the players are prepared and ready, both physically and also from a sight perspective. So we're trying to get the players thinking about the game before game day. So we do have contact with them in terms of when we might share with them who's going to be in the squad, and also how we then share with them who's going to be starting the game, who's maybe not going to be in the starting 11 but it's going to be a sub, who's going to be finishing the game. So we've thought very carefully about when we share that information with them. But I guess that might depend on, certainly my experience is you turn up at the venue and we're lucky if we've got changing facilities. So it's very much out the car, onto the pitch, and get the players active as quickly as possible. And then having just a sufficient amount of time. And that varies from situation to situation. You described before having very little time, but sometimes you can have too much time. So just spending some time to think about when you want the players to arrive, how you're then going to engage with the parents to help you set up the pitches and have some contact with them, and then how you then fill that time from when they arrive in the car park to the game starting, and all the things that kind of get in the way. Yeah,
and again, that massively depends on the age and stage of the players that you're working
with. For sure,
with.
Yeah.
I imagine if we asked the people who are logged on tonight, who do you coach, what age group, what stage, and if you want to type that in the chat box, then that's absolutely fine. My guess is we've probably got everyone from under 7s right the way up to non-league adult and everything in between. So yeah, we've got 12s, 13s. So let's go back to training then, Darran. So I've seen the way that you work with your players. How have you, right the way through the age groups that you've coached, how do you start to link training into the match that's coming? Is it just one match? Is it looking further ahead than that? What are some of the things that you're doing consistently in training that?
Okay. There's probably a couple of things there in terms of how we would approach the season. So we try and plan with the season in mind in terms of some of the themes and topics that we're going to fill the Thursday evening coaching sessions with. So we work in blocks.
So what an example might be?
We've been working on out of possession content, specifically looking at defending centrally for the last 6 weeks.
Again, 16s.
Under 16s.
Probably not something that you're bringing at under 7s.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we've recognised that would be something that we wanted to work on, given the level of football that we're playing, how long that we've known the boys for, and we also linked it into what we were doing pre-season. So as I say, we've spent 6 weeks working on that particular theme. We've then been taking that into games to see, can we put those things into practice? That's not to suggest that we don't also have one eye on other aspects of the game that occur on match day. We'll make a note of that, but that won't necessarily dominate our thinking. What's become more apparent as the players have got older is their expectations and what they want to get out of the training and the games, and matching our expectations with the players. I guess ultimately we've got different types of games that we play. So we've got league games. We've got league games against teams that we know some information about, and then we've got those games where we're playing against teams and players that we don't, because we haven't got that luxury of any match analysis or going to watch the opposition. We play in some cup games. It's fair to say that we've always put more emphasis on our cup games, and the boys have quite liked that. So, if we play well and we win and we get into the next round, and we've been quite consistent with that through the age groups, that's not to suggest that we're not trying to prepare the players to go out and do the best and try and win games, because that's always been the case. Yeah. But it's getting that balance between developing them for the next season, and ultimately developing them so they continue playing in the game.
Yeah, and I guess it's asking yourself that question of what role does the game, the match day, what role does that play in the context in which you're coaching? I still remember now, like it was yesterday, when I took the under-7s at our club, and it was the first ever time they'd pulled on a football kit, and it was really special to watch, actually, and the kids were running around. I think it finished 7-4, but some of them thought it was 7-4 to them, some thought it was 7-4 to the opposition. There was tears of joy, there was tears of sadness, everything in between. So you've got that to deal with, and then right the way up to there's some open age coaches in there where there may well be more at stake on match day, and what purpose does that serve, and fundamentally what is our role on that to make sure that experience is as positive as it can be, I guess.
I would say that there's almost a consistency. So we've been trying to work in a particular way with the players from that first season. But what we've acknowledged is that things do change. So that the level of understanding that the boys are now demonstrating is testament to what we've been doing for the last X number of seasons, and also understanding what motivates the boys essentially. So why do they come to our club? What do they want to do? They want to play football. They want to play the games. So the Sunday mornings or the Sunday afternoons is what we're trying to prepare them for. The coaching sessions on a Thursday just help with that preparation. So we're trying to run the two as close together as we possibly can. And I think that would be something that I would advocate to all the coaches, whether you're coaching the under-7s, whether you're coaching anything in between that and up to under-18s. You've got to try and ensure that there's a real link between what it is that you're spending your time doing on the weekday evening and how that looks in the game. And
the other thing, you said the word consistency there, and that is a big one for me. And are your behaviours consistent between training and match day? I've seen a whistle and a kit do some really weird things to some very normal, sane people who might exhibit one set of behaviours in training, and then suddenly when the whistle blows on a match day, it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I still remember the one of the I guess your experiences shape you as a coach, don't they? And I still remember playing adult football, one of the first teams I ever played for, and the coach was the manager, shall I say, was really supportive in training, and if things were going well on a match, it would generally be that way. But if things were kind of uncertain or nip and tuck, during the match for 90 minutes, it was constant from the sideline, literally screaming instructions, and I found quite quickly that I switched off to that. Now, some players might have responded well to it, I'm not sure. I switched off, and I found that it was kind of white noise. So when I was trying to think about, what's the sort of coach that I want to be, actually I figured out that for me that's not the sort of coach that I wanted to be. Now you might be something different, But I guess it's having that conversation with the players to ask, what do you want from me? Because there was quite a lot of questions coming in about coach behaviours, and do you? I think a lot of them went down the lines of, do I say nothing or say loads of instruction? And that's this kind of polarised black and white debate that we tend to find ourselves with a lot of questions, where the answer's probably somewhere in the middle. And I know you and I I've had a lot of conversations about game day behaviours, haven't we?
Yeah, I've certainly found that perhaps less is more for the lads that I coach. That's not to suggest that you don't say anything, because I think it's important to have that connection with the players on game day. But what I've learned is that if we're going to demonstrate that we really do trust the players to put into practice whatever it is that we've been covering in the week, we need to allow them the opportunity to do that on game day. So I kind of limit what I will share with the players in terms of information, tactics during the game, but we'll concentrate on encouragement. That's not to suggest that we don't have communication with the players during the game, but it is minimal. And ultimately that's taken some time to do that. It's also taken quite a lot of convincing in terms of some of the parents, because their expectations were coach would be very vocal, overtly enthusiastic on the touchline. And I remember thinking back, to when we were having the meetings with parents to explain that they would be really disappointed if they saw me mimicking perhaps some of the examples that you see when you watch professional.
The parents said this, did they?
Yeah. Well, I said to them that they would be disappointed if they thought that was going to be, shouting instructions on and behaving in that way. It's great when you can look back, because we took that approach, and I think we're now being able to see the benefits of that approach with the players. They can think for themselves, they can work stuff out, but there will be those occasions where actually they do sometimes need your help and need your support, and we are there to give it. The parent education thing is difficult. I still have one or two parents that I will just have some nice polite reminders just to explain what we're trying to do in terms of developing the players. They're on side, but you just need to remind them every once in a while.
Yeah, I think with that there's a few things that spring to mind. So, and it's about, there's differences between control and influence. So the only person's behaviour that you can control is your own. Yeah, and I think the parents and the players will take a lead from our behaviour on the touchline. So we better have a grip of what that behaviour is and looks like, because we're not very good as coaches of describing accurately our own behaviours. We say we do X, but in reality we really do Y, and the players are really good at telling us what we do. If you want a shock, or if you want to learn more about this, I would suggest miking yourself up with some headphones and your phone, and press record on your voice notes during the game, and then listen back to it and see what sort of behaviours or what are you saying and who to. My guess is it will probably largely be instruction and to the players that are nearest to you. So in other words, the left back or the left winger on your side will receive most of the coaching points, and they will be mostly instruction. And that, we're all, I guess, if you want to use the word guilty, I guess we're all guilty of that. Controlling our own behaviour. But then if we're looking to influence parents, and it's an influence thing, because we can't control them, and what I've learned is this game can bring out the best and the worst in people. We need to influence them, but we can only influence them if we've got a good relationship with the parents. So it stems from that principally, and with the players, if you've got a good relationship with them, you're more likely to be able to positively influence them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's where it's important that you get that consistency from one season to another in terms of how you go about your coaching and also that match day experience. That consistency breeds a real opportunity to improve and develop, and then move things along. I've by no means got it right, but I think what I've learned certainly from that first season, being very, very clear about what we're trying to do in terms of developing the players, both in coaching and then what that's going to look like on game day, has been really important.
Yeah, and thinking about it now, the parents of the boys that I coach, I was having a conversation with somebody about this the other week. They're actually, given the circumstances, they're probably the best set of parents anyone could imagine. Really, really great people, and I don't think that happens overnight, and it doesn't happen by chance. It happens through having a good, positive relationship with them, and I guess it's their DNA that's running around the pitch, and we are kind of responsible for how that experience plays out at a weekend, aren't we?
And we were talking earlier, weren't we? We were saying that how do you ensure that parents continue to come and watch the sons and daughters, and are there as volunteers and helpers when you get to those upper age groups? I think what I've learnt is if the football is good to watch, and the parents can see that the children, the lads in my case, are trying to play the game in the right way and it's attractive football, they'll come and watch. So we've not compromised in terms of the type of football that we've wanted to encourage the lads to embrace. And that's probably one of the things that I'm really proud that we have good attendance from the parents, and it's an easy win in terms of getting them to be those volunteers on game day. So to help take down the goals at the end of the game. When we first started, we said we're there for the players, and if you want us to warm them up before the game and do the team talks and give them our full attention, we really need parents to be there to help us, and that's always been consistent. But I guess you reap what you sow, and if you want volunteers, then you've got to try and get the parents on board, because if they're not happy with what you're doing, then they'll take the sons and daughters elsewhere.
I'm sure we'll talk more about parents over the next half an hour or so, but you talked about team talks and naming a team. So what do you do then, Darran? How do you deal with the team, with starters, with, you said the word finishes before, so if you want to expand on that a little bit, that would be great.
I think what things have changed a little bit this last couple of certainly last season and this season.
I think we'll have to log you back in there, Darran.
What I've certainly found is the lads who I coach, the earlier that we can let them know who's involved, that's helpful for them. So if we're playing on a Sunday, as we do, we will communicate with the players on a Friday evening. Mm-hmm. So whether that's through Facebook, whether that's we have an app that we use. So we'll let the players know who's involved in the squad, and then on game day itself, when everybody arrives, once all the players are there, we'll tell them as early as possible who's going to be starting the game.
Why is that?
It gives some of the players time to actually settle themselves. So I know that some of the lads need to know well in advance whether they're playing or not. Mm-hmm. There's others we could probably drop it on them with 5 minutes to go, but what I've learned is collectively it's better to give them that time. It also allows them to have conversations with them to link things into previous games or what we've been doing in training.
So what's the process that you go through? Is it always you that selects the starting lineup? Is there any player involvement? What's the process that you go through to arrive at the starting team?
Okay, great question. I think we've always tried to ensure that if everybody's fit and everybody's available, we've taken them to the game. If players have not been available, that's probably made things a little bit easier, because now we can only take a certain number of players to the game. I would talk with the couple of other volunteer parent coaches, so we get some sense of who's going to be involved, who needs to start. So we've almost planned it, so we kind of know who's going to be involved, who the substitute's going to be, what that's going to be look like in terms of substitutions and tactical changes, if you will. We can never predict the unpredictable. So if somebody gets injured or somebody feels unwell, which certainly happens, you've got to be adaptable and make those changes sometimes just before kick-off. But planning it and having some sense of how the match day is going to look has certainly been helpful, particularly when the boys were younger. We were trying to ensure that everybody got a sufficient amount of game time, and if we were going to play them in different positions, that was well thought out, and we could share that with the players. Whether they could take that on board when they were younger, I'm not sure, but certainly as they've got older, they'd like to know how they're going to be involved, where they're going to play, and if we've got any particular tactics for a game. Yeah,
I found that working in mini soccer was much easier to kind of allocate the game time. So at mini soccer, what I've learned recently, because I've done some research on teenagers' attitudes around match day, and it's what I found interesting is how some of the changes that go on from childhood into adolescence and beyond. And one of the things that changes quite dramatically is fairness. So in childhood, pre-adolescence, children's view of fairness is very much egalitarian. So if you and I had to split 10 sweets or 10 oranges that we've gone and picked, it would be 5 and 5. But then if you ask adolescents how they would want to distribute those, it would then become more meritocratic. So who spent more time picking the oranges, you or me? Well, who worked harder? Those sort of questions start to get asked, and they come into fairness. So in mini soccer, you would have 40 minutes, and I would literally do the maths. So the length of the match, 40-minute game, times by the number of squad players that you've got, and then divide that over the number of players that were on the pitch, and then you've got your amount of playing time. Then it would be really easy mainly because there were less kind of injuries and things like that to deal with at mini soccer. The kids just went on, run around, come off, have a quick break, on you go again. I remember you describing them once as like little Duracell bunnies once. And then as I've coached more in the teenage years, you're having a plan, but I find that working to minimums recently has helped more rather than absolutes. So in principle, everyone will get 50, half a game, but then you might allocate, or I might allocate the rest of the playing time based on things that are within the young people's control. So it might be attendance at training, which is or commitment and consistency. It depends what you value. So we did some work with our boys over the last year or so to find out what are the things that are important to us as a team. And I use the word us deliberately, and listen to the language that you use when you're talking about the team. I'm very wary of my team, because it's not your team. You don't own the players. You're one team. And the kind of us thing, it's coaches will be very quick to talk about we and us when the outcome is a positive, is a win, and very quick to distance themselves. You can hear this on Match of the Day as well. It's they and them when they lose a game. So trying to be consistent in language for a start, but then looking at. So we looked at what was important to us, and one of the things was commitment, and fairness. So, and this came about by accident, but we actually had a squad that was bigger than the 60. We can take 16 on a match day.
Yep.
So the problem I've inadvertently created is that I've got 19 players and 16 match day squad places. So we had the conversation about, right, well, what is fairness and how are we going to select that squad? So actually it turned into a positive. So keeping a Google sheet for the whole of last season on who trained and who was available, and then if everyone's available, then I've got to make some difficult decisions. But those decisions are made easier when I look at, right, who's been training the most over the season, and then whose kind of turn is it next to have a rest week and so on. So you start to look at working. So within the principle of fairness, how can you be fair in terms of squad selection and then minutes allocated on the pitch? So you're not working within absolute rules, but just within principles that guide you. I think you've had something similar, haven't you?
Yeah, pretty much. We have 18 in the squad. We can take on game day 15. So if everybody's fit and available, then we have to have those hard decisions, and we've kind of looked at something similar to yourself in terms of attendance at training. So if somebody doesn't attend training, and now we communicate with the kids through social media. If they don't attend training, they can't just expect to be picked for game day on Sunday. By the same token, if they do attend training, then we're looking at their attitude, their effort, their commitment, but we're also looking at how they fare in the game as well, because I'm mindful that at some point they're going to progress to adult football, and it's going to look different to perhaps their experience that they've had with us in grassroots football. So if they've played well in the game, we had similar sorts of discussions with the lads. They felt it was important that they should be rewarded for good performance, and that might vary from one game to another. So they've almost put a tariff on the types of games that we play. So for example, if we were to play in a cup game, a county cup game, the boys see that as being the highest tariff of game, playing against different opposition, more testing opposition, and that's different to if we play in our local league's cup competition. And then by the same token, we've got league games. They'll place a higher tariff on when we play the teams who we feel the strongest teams in our league, as opposed to playing against teams on the same level as us, or teams that, based on previous experience, we think that we're ahead of them.
Okay.
And then we also intersperse, when we're not playing those games, we play loads of friendlies, and that gives us an opportunity to make sure that perhaps somebody who's not played the week before because they've been injured or unavailable, that we give them more game time. Yeah. So over the course of the season, it works really well. Perhaps maybe not as sophisticated as yourself of keeping that Google sheet, but just having some sense of who's been involved with the games, and having a rough idea of pretty much how much involvement they're getting. So we work on that minimum basis. Everybody plays on game day unless they get injured or they're unable to continue in the game. Yeah,
and I guess the important caveat here is we're talking about commitment and consistency and turning up to training, which for a 15, 16-year-old is, I dare say, more than within their control. Younger down, children are much more reliant on their parents. So I'd say that just a word of caution, if we're basing things like squad selection and playing time on turning up to training, there could be a huge number of factors that would influence that. Again, it depends on, etc., etc. Context is king. So more about the jury. So you've talked about team selection, squad selection. There was a number of questions that came in about during the game and subs, and let's go on that then. From your experience, what are some of the good things that you've done or seen in the way that coaches work with and manage the subs?
Some players need to observe before they play, so it's quite helpful for them not to start the game. It also allows you the opportunity to talk to them, get them to observe teammates and also observe the opposition, getting them to watch football, essentially. That's helpful for when they then join the game. It can be really, really helpful for some individuals.
Just on that, I find that those moments, and I slight aside, in training, those one-to-one moments are absolutely golden, because you might only see the players for a couple of hours a week. So the boys I coach don't know this, but I will pick one or two of them who I feel I might need a little one-to-one with on a Wednesday night, and just ask them to come and give me a hand to move the goals, because I've got them then for a couple of minutes. They can't go anywhere, and I can have that little conversation with them. And likewise, the moments where those players are on the sideline, I find if you use them well, they can be really good moments of having an undistracted one-to-one discussion with the player. Because I don't know what your thoughts are. Once the whistle blows in a game as random and chaotic as football, there's very little that we can do to control or influence the result. Yeah. So it's I've just diverted you right off course then, Darren. But for me, those take advantage of the opportunities of having those players on the sideline.
Yeah,
brings
and if you've decided that you're going to have certain players that you introduce into the game, it could well be that you're going to give them specific things to work on, without making it too complicated. Just giving just some simple goal setting. And I'm very conscious that we can get so preoccupied with individual challenges, but for me it's just simple stuff to get the kids to recognise that that's going to help them get better at playing the game. So a pretty good example would be we have two goalkeepers, so we know that they're both going to play a part in the game. Deciding who starts the first half and whether they play a full half, or whether we make the substitution halfway through the first half and so on and so forth in the second. We've actually thought about that. We've spoken to the lads to find out what they wanted, and they now prefer to play a full half of 40 minutes because they feel they get a workout. And it allows you then to engage with the second goalkeeper who's coming on at half time in an individual way. By the same token, we do similar stuff with the outfield players, but because we've always tried to give them a variety of experience in terms of where they've played, I think we're probably at a position now where the lads are certainly comfortable in playing a couple of positions, but they know what they like. So if we gave complete ownership over to the boys, I think they would pretty much put themselves in their preferred position. What we will try and do over the course of the season is play them in a second position. Some of the lads are a little bit more versatile. We can play them in other positions if people are injured, or if we need to change things around. And they're those magic moments where you actually learn some stuff about the kids, and they learn some things about themselves, which isn't planned, it's just unpredictable, and then we use that to our advantage as the season progresses.
Yeah, and actually that claws right back to understanding the motivation of the players in your care. So the one consistent thing right the way through the age groups that I imagine every coach logging on to this webinar tonight will be that their players play the game to be with their mates, to have fun, to get a good workout and exercise and keep fit and healthy, and actually enjoy the challenge and enjoy being challenged. And I think that's pretty consistent right the way through. So I guess you just said something there about those golden moments, framing what success is on match day, because if our only measure of success on the match day is the end result, the outcome, it's extremely fragile and often dependent on so many things that are out of our control and the players' control. Football's a really, like I've already said, the most random, chaotic game on the planet. It's probably one of the reasons why it's the most exciting, because most games are decided by one moment. That could be down to a bounce, a decision that goes against. So not getting too high, not getting too low, I guess wouldn't be a bad bit of advice, and judging the success of match day on stuff that is within the player's control.
It's probably about balance, and making sure that you get that pitched at the right level, depending on age, ability, motivation, expectations of the kids. I mean, we always ask the players at the start of the season what they would like to achieve, and some of the lads continue to say they want to win the league. So there's that aspirational stuff, aspiring to be the winners of the league, and I'd never take that away from them, because they're ambitious, and they're the ones that really want to test themselves. And
at that age, being part of a group is really, really important to a teenager, and seeing your social group, in this case a football team, dominant in the hierarchy, i.e. the league table, is also really important to teenagers. Yeah, probably not as important younger down.
I think the testing moments are where things don't go your way, and you then need some sense of reason to remind the players that they are making progress, they are improving collectively and on an individual basis, and that they won't be defined by that one game, but we'll actually look at what we've achieved over the course of the season, and ultimately how we progress then to the following season. And that's certainly worked for us. It sounds very idealistic, but that's been, I guess, informed by what the players are looking to get out of their experience playing football, and listening to them.
There's some really good points actually I'm reading in the chat box here, and one there is talking about using the subs to make coaching points.
Yep.
And so a real common question that we trawled through beforehand was about half-time team talks, and actually that's a really good example of how you can keep the players more involved. And also, and I think, I'm certainly guilty of this and have been, is we take on so much on a match day. If you were to list out all the roles and all the things that need doing, if you looked at it, you'd be like, oh my word, like that's a lot of things to do. How much of that could we actually, outsource to the players? And I think one of those might be half time. If you think about really, in grassroots football, very few of us will have more than 5 minutes at half time. It's probably more like 3 minutes. And so how you use that time is really important. And if we can get the players involved and actually encourage some thought and discussion, possibly even better.
Yeah, for sure. I think an approach that we've taken is you almost need to give the players some time just to be calm after the first half, or if you're playing in periods, that period of play. Allow them just to settle themselves down, have a drink, chat amongst themselves, and then use the opportunity after to find out what they're thinking. Now, that can be really challenging if you've got a lively group of under sevens. They might need a little bit more guidance.
Need to log in again.
But with the guys that I'm coaching, we really trust them that they can give some informed comment back. You can also see which characters have got leadership qualities, who the other players will kind of listen to and take their lead from, and certainly what we've tried to do last season, this season, particularly with the guys who were the subs. This season we've got the luxury of dugouts, so getting the players to come out of the dugout has been quite an interesting challenge. But if you will, we've wanted them to lead, even if it's just one thing. Around the half-time team talk is one thing that we've kind of, we've done well, that's been really obvious, and they've wanted to feed that back to the team. And then maybe something in terms of what is it that we need to try and pick up on in the second half. So that could be something specific about an opposition player that's having impact on the game, and how we might be able to deal with that. Or it might be just to introduce who the substitutions are going to be, rather than it being us. That said, there will be those instances where the players look to us, and I guess what I would encourage coaches is, sometimes the players do look to you as the adult to take the lead, and as long as it's well intentioned. And it's for the benefit of the players in terms of their experience and helping them in the second half. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I've had some funny examples of this in recent years where I've tried to let the players in my care know that, I trust you implicitly. So somebody said they see a different game to us. They do, because they're the ones on the pitch that are playing it. So if we can develop decision makers, if you like, leaders on the pitch who are comfortable at making decisions, then let's go with it. So one of the messages I've said, I trust you guys. If you see something, you need to change things around, do it. It's your game at the end of the day. I'm here to serve you guys. So I've put a player on in a certain position with the intention of giving that player some exposure to a wide position or a central or defence or midfield. And then I've turned my back, and 2 minutes later, the players have then shuffled it round to what they want. Yeah. So if you're going to give trust and ownership, you better follow through with it. So I can't at that moment then, take that power back, because I've told them that you can make the decisions. You've got that license. It depends how far you want to go with this. Yeah. And sometimes I've had instances where I've said to the players, "Do you want to sort the team out?" Yeah, we'll do it today. And then there's other times where they've come up to me and said, will you sort the team? So it's very rarely like a hard and fast rule for any blanket group or even within that group over time.
I would encourage the coaches to try and work out what approach is going to work for them as an individual coach, but also what's going to be best for their players. And that's the uniqueness of I guess the role of the coach. And use what limited time that you've got at half time wisely, so emphasise the positives, and encourage them to do things differently. So what I mean by that is, how do you then motivate and challenge the players when they come off if they're winning the game convincingly, as opposed to a situation where they're coming off and they're losing heavily. The poles apart, but the good coach will know how to motivate and keep the players focused so that they are ready to go out if they're winning the game convincingly, but also equally prepared and ready to go out for the second half if it's the opposite.
Yeah, and there is some evidence behind this. So it's a paper that I read, and if people are interested, you can find it on Google Scholar. It's called "Is Winning Everything?" So what these guys did, what the researchers did, was look at the coaching behaviours and of a number of coaches across some team sports, and then they compared those coaching behaviours to win-loss percentages and the attitudes of the players. Players were aged 10 to 15, and what was found was that coaches with a higher win-loss record tended to focus their behaviours on more task focused rather than ego focused. And what I mean by that is, so process of learning, of outcome, process of learning, effort, things that are more within the player's control rather than dominating the opposition or being solely focused on comparing yourself to others or the outcome. And then the other interesting thing behind this was the players were they were attached more to coaching behaviours than winning. So in other words, players preferred a coach who was more positive in their behaviours than they did winning and losing. So some of the coaches would, in the questions were talking about how can I shift the focus because all the kids want to do is win, and that's natural, yes, and that is part of the game. But actually, the players will I think they prefer a coach who is more positive and displays more positive coaching behaviours than just winning and losing. And I can attest for that. Our kids finished last season with a -95 goal difference, second bottom in the second division. But we retained 19 players from under 15 to under 16. Yeah. So I think that there's again more of a point to again think about your coaching behaviours and what the impact what they might have on the players and the environment that you're creating.
I guess it's so important that you're aware of what you're saying and what you're doing and where you're placing the emphasis. And I guess when you then you begin to start to reflect and review what's happened in the game. So we've kind of looked at before, we've looked at during the game, but then how do you draw a line under the game? And I think it's very easy to get caught up in long explanations about what's just happened, and very often, it's about keeping things really simple and straightforward, focusing on the positives with the players, linking it into maybe that aspect of the game that you've been working on in the training sessions that you've then been observing in the game, and getting the kids off, getting them on to the next thing that they're going to do on game day. And we were chatting earlier, weren't we, about what's the best time then to pick up on things that have happened, and it's probably that next coaching session. Yeah. So if you play on Sunday and your coaching session's on Monday, it's fresh in the mind, so you've got a pretty quick opportunity. If it's later in the week, Thursday or Friday evening, you've got a bit of time to wait, but collect your thoughts and really then concentrate on what were the real outcomes from the weekend's game. Yeah, and
I'm guilty of this because it's easy to talk from a pedestal, but Saturday was in 20 plus years of coaching, Saturday was probably the worst experience I've ever had on a match day, without going into too many details. And we sat in a greasy spoon planning this discussion a couple of weeks ago, and I said we both think that if we're going to have any sort of rational thoughts about post game, because the game does do some weird and wonderful things to humans, sleep on it.
Yeah.
And normally I make better decisions after I've slept on an event for at least 2 or 3 days, and I didn't, and I kind of let the emotions get the better of me, and I'm still, honestly, it's taken me 3 nights of struggling to get to sleep, still trying to work out how best to deal with this situation that's arisen. But there is huge importance, or there's a lot to be said for sleeping on this and really thinking and not getting too high in the highs and not getting too low in the lows, and being a bit more rational post event.
Yeah, I think gauging what your team or group of players need. The reality is, if it's young players, foundation phase, they're already moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing, especially with the age and stage that you work at. It can ruin an adult's weekend, and I'll hold my hand up, it definitely ruined mine on Saturday. but with younger players, certainly, you know, they move on very, very, very quickly, and it's a nice thing, I guess, when you're coaching at that age and stage, and you've got to be responsive to that. Anything else kind of post-match, Darran, that your thoughts, or that you do?
Increasingly so now, cool down, and just making sure that if we have got the time and we've got the opportunity to get the boys to cool down, and they actually thank us for it on a Thursday, because I'll ask them, how were you on Sunday afternoon, how were you on Monday, and if we've been able to have a cool down and do some stretching, that's really helpful for them in terms of their physical development. Not so much for those coaches that are, you know, working with younger players, where perhaps, you know, you don't need to do that cool down. And I guess, you know, some of the coaches out there, they'll probably look to try and involve parents and get the parents to come and listen, particularly if you're giving information about what's happening in the week, whether you know, your training is happening. It's half term this week. You know, with the lads that I coach, so I know that if we'd have played on the weekend, it would have been making sure that we know who's attending training, who's not there, and how things are going to look for the following weekend's game. Yeah,
but the post-match stuff can be a really nice opportunity to involve the parents, to do that kind of debrief in earshot, and just to really highlight some specifics that were good as a collective or as an individual, and again basing it on things that are perhaps within the player's control. I would really avoid too many comparisons of, you know, so and so did this, therefore you should all be. You know, it can be quite a fragile thing, but looking at specifically picking out stuff that was, you know, I guess within what you value. So if you value something if you value creativity, for example, and a player's tried to do something but it hasn't quite come off, how do you deal with that? You know, do you praise it? Do you dismiss it? And it goes, you use the word, you know, golden moments. Those are real golden moments where you can start to shape behaviour and influence the parents on the sideline as well.
I think that's tricky as well in knowing when and how to involve the parents. On reflection, we could probably have done more of that in terms of asking the parents to come over to, you know, where we're, you know, talking to the boys after the game. But it is quite interesting, you know, that some will come and collect the lads because they want to get off, because they've got a younger sibling that's got another game in the afternoon. And even if we just spend 2-3 minutes and they're listening to us sharing some positive feedback about how the team has played, that's really helpful.
But the other thing is, and one person in the questions mentioned about player reflection, and I think that if we, you know, rather than digging too much into it post-match, if we can plant some seeds that, you know, get the players, and it won't work with all, but some of them might, if we plant the right questions with them, okay, come to training with what you thought about X, Y or Z, and get the players to start reflecting on their own involvement in the game. That might be a good starting point to have a nice, you know, rational discussion when they come training midweek.
For sure, and I guess it's almost questioning, how simple do you want to keep it? How much time have you got? How do you want to help the players? And as we've been trying to do, we're trying to link the training and the coaching session with the game, and the game with the next training and coaching session. Yeah. So linking it together and keeping it realistic and meeting the needs of the players, that's the trick.
Yeah. 7:02 p.m. I noticed that one or two are starting to log off because they got coaching, which is a good thing. We tried to answer all 200 plus questions. I guess it's difficult with the specifics. You know, hopefully the guys that have logged on this evening, I hope you've taken something from it. Just to wrap up, Darran, is there anything that we've missed, or if you know had some kind of summary, what might that be?
I think planning and preparing for the game is critical. It's the one thing which the players and us as coaches, we all look forward to. But definitely plan it, enjoy it, and use it as an opportunity to enthuse the players and the parents, and hopefully just stay calm and behave in the right way.
Thank you. I should have taken that advice on Saturday. Brilliant. Well, look, thanks everyone for logging on and listening in. If you've got any more questions that we haven't answered, happy to answer them on Twitter. I'm sure you could find us, Darran Bowles and Jack Walton, and then extra content, isn't it?
Yeah, just some extra content. If you are looking for stuff to read, if any of you actively use Hive Learning, if you go on the FA's coaching community, there's a really great section on there about matchday coaching. Loads of contributions from grassroots coaches talking about their experiences. It's worth a look. There's also on the FA education section of the FA website, there's a really neat CPD opportunity. It's free.
Yeah.
It links into a lot of stuff that we've discussed about game day, and it will provide you with some extra CPD.
Yeah. So if you go to learning.thefa.com,
that's right. Yeah.
You can register for that. It's like a little free online module that you can work through. And what it does is it links to quite a few boot room articles. So the boot room is another decent resource with loads of articles around match day.
Yeah.
That hopefully we've brought to light.
And just one last thing in terms of CPD and a lot of the activity that will be happening out across the regions and in counties going forwards. There's going to be a range of different CPD workshops that are specifically looking at subjects, topics that are really relevant to the foundation phase and the youth development phase. So if you're not already familiar and connected to your local county FA, have a look, and they will be rolled out towards the end of this calendar year, but certainly into the new calendar year, and some great stuff that's been put together. Yeah,
actually, and it's just reminded me just before we go, there was quite a few questions about goalkeepers and warm-ups, and without going into the weeds on these, there is some. We had a really good discussion with a guy called Tim Dittmer, who's one of our national goalkeeping coaches, works with the under-21s, fantastic guy. That conversation is on the Liverpool FA podcast, and I think about halfway through, Tim gives some really, really good advice of working with goalkeepers and warm-ups for goalkeepers within that. So I'll point you to there. And for anyone that wants to go through this again, we've recorded the audio and we'll put that up on the Liverpool FA podcast. So if anyone wants to pass this on or listen again. I think lastly, I know the guys who've logged in will get some feedback forms. So please be honest. We've got very, very thick skin. So tell us what you thought was good, bad and ugly about this evening, and it helps us to make these sort of things better, a better experience for you guys.
Yeah.
I think that's...
Thanks for listening. Really appreciate you giving up an hour of your time, and enjoy your coaching sessions this week, and hopefully we'll get some games on at the weekend if the weather is fair and kind in your part of the country. Cheerio.
Cheers. Good night. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please help spread the word or leave us a review on iTunes. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. You can reach me on Twitter @JackWalton1, and don't forget to follow Liverpool FA @Liverpool_CFA. See you next time.